I have been saving for months, meticulously setting aside every extra dollar I could scrape together from my job, side gigs, and even small cash gifts I received from friends and family. Every cent went into a separate envelope, tucked safely away in a drawer where no one could touch it. The reason was simple. I wanted to propose to my girlfriend, Emily. I wanted the moment to be perfect, a reflection of how much I loved her and the life I imagined we would build together. Emily and I had been together for 4 years. We had met in college, bonded over shared interests, and slowly, over late-night conversations and small acts of kindness, we had built a life together. From the beginning, I had envisioned a future with her moving in together, traveling, eventually marrying, and perhaps starting a family. Every plan, every decision, every small sacrifice I made was infused with the hope of a shared life. By the time I had saved enough for the ring, I wanted a simple but elegant design with a small diamond that I knew she would love. I felt both excited and nervous. I imagined her reaction when I knelt before her, the surprise in her eyes, the joy, the tears, the laughter. I wanted it to be a moment frozen in time, something we would remember forever. The day I finally had the money in hand, I felt a rush of anticipation. I had planned the visit to the jeweler carefully, picking a time when the store would be quiet so that I could focus, choose the ring thoughtfully, and pay without distractions. But when I went to retrieve the envelope, it was gone. My heart sank. I searched my apartment, retracing every step, every pocket, every possible hiding place. Nothing. Confused and alarmed, I called Emily. I wanted to tell her what had happened, to ask if she had seen it, to find some explanation. When she answered, her voice sounded unusually cheerful. "Hey, how's it going?" she said. I could barely get out a coherent question before she interrupted with excitement about a trip she had just booked for herself. "What trip?" I asked, my voice tight. "Wait, what do you mean? Did you spend the money I saved for the ring?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then came a laugh, light and carefree, as if she were telling a joke. "Oh, that? Yeah, I used some of the money. I didn't know it was all meant for a ring. I just thought it was our shared savings. You know." I felt my chest tighten, disbelief and betrayal flooding through me. "Emily, no. That was my money. I saved that for us for our engagement. For our future together." Her laughter faded slightly, replaced by a tone I didn't recognize: indifference. "Relax, it's just money. You can save up again. Don't be so dramatic." Dramatic. I had worked months, skipping meals, avoiding luxuries, passing on small pleasures, all for that moment. And now, she was dismissing it as though it were nothing, as if my efforts, my sacrifices, my love meant nothing. I hung up, feeling a storm of emotions: anger, disappointment, disbelief, and a deep, gnawing sadness. I tried to process it logically. Could it have been a misunderstanding? Maybe she didn't realize how important that money was to me. But even the possibility of that excuse felt hollow. There have been countless conversations about our future, about marriage, about the life we were building together. How could she not know? I spent the next few hours pacing my apartment, replaying every memory, every interaction, every plan we had made. Slowly, it began to dawn on me that this wasn't a simple mistake. The carelessness, the nonchalance, the lack of regard for my feelings, it was a pattern. I had noticed small things before, moments when she dismissed my concerns or made decisions without consulting me. I had chalked it up to personality, to her being independent. But now, it was clear, she had no respect for the commitment and effort I had put into our shared future. I called my best friend, Mark, and poured out everything. He listened quietly, letting me vent, letting the anger and hurt spill out. "Man," he said finally, "that's not just careless. That's disrespectful. That's someone who isn't in this relationship for the long haul." I knew he was right, but I hated to admit it. I wanted to believe in her, to believe in us, to believe that love could overcome mistakes. But the reality was undeniable. My vision of the perfect proposal, the symbol of our love, had been shattered not by chance, but by her actions. Over the next few days, I confronted her directly. I explained how deeply hurt I was, how much effort and sacrifice had gone into saving that money, and how her behavior had shown a lack of consideration for my feelings and our future. She apologized, vaguely, but there was no real acknowledgement of the gravity of her actions, no genuine understanding of the emotional impact. It was then I realized something profound. Love, commitment, and the dream of a shared future cannot thrive in an environment of disregard and selfishness. I had been investing not just money, but trust, patience, and hope into someone who wasn't willing or perhaps capable of reciprocating that level of care. That night, I sat alone, reflecting on everything we had been through. I realized that this moment, as devastating as it felt, was also a turning point. I could either allow it to destroy me, to erode my faith in love and partnership, or I could take it as a lesson, a moment of clarity that revealed the true nature of our relationship. I chose the latter. I decided to step back, to reassess, and to prioritize my own values, integrity, and emotional well-being. I understood that the dreams I had for a life together could not be realized with someone who dismissed my efforts and disregarded my feelings. It wasn't just about the ring, it was about respect, trust, and mutual commitment. In the weeks that followed, I focused on myself, my career, and my passions. I repaired friendships I had neglected, pursued goals I had set aside, and slowly, the sting of betrayal began to fade. I realized that love wasn't just about shared dreams, it was about shared respect, shared responsibility, and the ability to honor each other's sacrifices. Emily and I eventually parted ways. It was painful, yes, but also liberating. I no longer had to navigate a relationship where my efforts were minimized or my dreams ignored. I had regained control over my life, my future, and my emotional well-being. Looking back, I understand now that the engagement ring was never the most important part of the story. The real lesson was about recognizing my own worth, demanding respect, and refusing to allow someone else's disregard to define my happiness. The money, the disappointment, the shattered dream, it all became a catalyst for growth, self-awareness, and the pursuit of a future where love is reciprocal, not conditional. In the weeks after our breakup, I had a lot of time to reflect on what had happened and why it hurt so much. At first, I found myself replaying the moment over and over, the realization that Emily had used the money I had painstakingly saved, the shock, the anger, and the deep sense of betrayal. I couldn't understand how someone I loved, someone I had envisioned a life with, could act so thoughtlessly. Every time I thought about it, the hurt returned. But gradually, I started seeing it in a different light. This wasn't just about the money or the engagement ring, it was about a pattern of behavior I had ignored for too long. There had been little signs over the years, dismissive remarks about my work, decisions made without consulting me, subtle undermining of my efforts. I had brushed them off because I wanted to believe in her, because I wanted to believe in us. But this moment was undeniable proof that our values and priorities were fundamentally incompatible. I began focusing on rebuilding myself. I threw myself into my career, taking on projects I had been hesitant to tackle before. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, spending long evenings writing, running, and learning new skills. I surrounded myself with supportive friends who reminded me of my worth and helped me process the betrayal. Slowly, the anger transformed into determination, and the sadness into clarity. During this period, I also began dating again, cautiously at first. I wasn't ready to jump into a new relationship, but I wanted to explore connections with people who shared my values, who respected my efforts, and who would appreciate the depth of love and commitment I had to offer. It was eye-opening. After Emily, I realized how many people take for granted the sacrifices and thoughtfulness of their partners. I became more discerning, valuing emotional maturity, empathy, and integrity above charm or superficial attraction. Months later, I encountered Emily unexpectedly. She looked nervous, almost sheepish, as if she were aware of how her actions had hurt me. We spoke briefly. She mentioned that she had learned a lot and had grown since our breakup. I listened politely, nodding, but I didn't let myself be drawn back into her narrative. I had grown too. I had learned that my happiness wasn't dependent on her or anyone else, and that my worth wasn't tied to how someone else treated me. I smiled and wished her well, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible months earlier. Then came a surprising moment of insight. I realized that while the engagement ring had represented a dream of a shared future, it had also been a symbol of my own hope and dedication. Losing that dream didn't diminish the love or effort I had invested, it merely redirected it. I had proven to myself that I could care deeply, plan meticulously, and act with integrity. Even when met with disregard, that strength, I realized, was more valuable than any ring or romantic gesture. Over time, I built a life that felt both stable and exciting. I traveled to places I had always wanted to visit, started a creative project that became a passion, and nurtured relationships with people who valued and respected me. I met someone new, a partner who shared my values, celebrated my efforts, and treated me with the respect and consideration I had once taken for granted. The connection was slower to develop than with Emily, but it was deeper, rooted in mutual understanding and genuine care. Looking back on that period, I see now that the heartbreak was a turning point. It forced me to confront uncomfortable truths, reassess my priorities, and recognize the importance of boundaries and self-respect. I learned that love isn't just about affection or shared experiences, it's about alignment in values, reciprocity in effort, and a willingness to honor each other's sacrifices. I also learned the importance of forgiveness, not necessarily for Emily, but for myself. Holding onto bitterness would have kept me trapped in the past, reliving the betrayal over and over. By letting go of the anger, I freed myself to move forward, to build a life that reflected my worth, and to find love that was both healthy and sustaining. Years later, when I finally proposed to my new partner, I didn't focus on grandeur or extravagance. I chose a simple, meaningful ring, but more importantly, I planned a proposal that reflected our shared values, our mutual respect, and our commitment to building a future together. The moment was perfect not because of the ring, but because of the foundation of love, understanding, and integrity we had built. In the end, losing that first engagement ring, though painful, was a blessing in disguise. It forced me to confront reality, recognize my worth, and ultimately, find a love that was genuine and reciprocal. The journey was painful, yes, but it taught me resilience, self-respect, and the importance of prioritizing people who honor the effort and care you invest in them. I emerged stronger, wiser, and more prepared for a life of meaningful connection than I ever could have been otherwise. After finally stepping away from Emily, I realized that healing wasn't linear. There were days when memories of the engagement ring, of her careless attitude, of the months I had sacrificed, would surface unbidden. I would feel that familiar mix of anger and disappointment, like a dull ache that refused to fade. But instead of letting it consume me, I began writing about it, journaling my thoughts, venting my frustrations onto paper, and reflecting on what I had learned from the experience. Through writing, I discovered patterns in my own behavior. I had often put others' needs above my own, hoping that love and patience would be reciprocated. In Emily's case, it wasn't. That realization stung, but it was also empowering. I started setting boundaries in other areas of my life, learning to assert my needs without guilt, and refusing to allow my efforts to be taken for granted again. Work became another outlet for focus and growth. I had always been diligent, but now I approached projects with a new energy and determination. I volunteered for leadership opportunities, challenged myself with difficult tasks, and slowly, colleagues and supervisors noticed the intensity and passion I brought to my work. It was a reminder that my value wasn't solely tied to romantic relationships, it was intrinsic, present in the dedication I brought to every aspect of my life. Socially, I became more selective about whom I invested my time and energy in. Friends who had drifted away during my relationship with Emily returned to my life, offering support, perspective, and laughter. I realized that community mattered, that surrounding myself with people who respected and valued me was just as important as any romantic connection. Then came the slow, cautious exploration of new romantic relationships. At first, I dated casually, learning to navigate the world of dating without carrying the baggage of my previous heartbreak. I discovered that my experiences had made me wiser, more perceptive, more discerning. I could sense red flags earlier, recognize signs of immaturity or selfishness, and prioritize emotional compatibility over surface-level attraction. Meeting someone new was tentative at first. I had been hurt deeply, and I wasn't willing to risk that pain again. But as time went on, I met someone who challenged me in the best possible ways, someone who appreciated my efforts, shared my values, and respected my boundaries. Conversations flowed easily, laughter came naturally, and I felt a sense of security and trust I hadn't known with Emily. As our connection deepened, I realized how much I had grown from the experience of losing the engagement ring. It had forced me to confront painful truths, but it had also given me clarity. I knew what I deserved, what I would accept, and how to recognize a partner who could truly share a life with me. The heartbreak became a teacher, guiding me toward a love that was patient, considerate, and reciprocal. Eventually, I planned my proposal with this new partner. And like the rushed, anxious plan I had with Emily, this proposal was deliberate, thoughtful, and infused with genuine emotion. I didn't focus on materialism or extravagance. The ring was simple, but meaningful, chosen to symbolize not just love but trust, commitment, and shared values. When I knelt before her and asked her to marry me, the moment felt profound in a way I had never imagined possible. Reflecting on the journey, I recognized that every hardship, every heartbreak, every moment of betrayal had shaped me into someone more resilient, more aware, and more prepared for a life of meaningful love. The loss of the engagement ring had been devastating, yes, but it had also been transformative. It taught me self-worth, patience, discernment, and the importance of prioritizing genuine respect and mutual care in relationships. Now, years later, when I think back to the months of saving, the heartbreak, and the disappointment, I no longer feel anger or regret. Instead, I feel gratitude for the lessons, the growth, and the eventual love that was far deeper and more fulfilling than anything I could have imagined with Emily. That chapter of my life, painful as it was, became the foundation for everything that followed. And it remains a constant reminder that sometimes the hardest moments lead to the most profound transformations. Even after I met my new partner, I still had to navigate the shadows of my past. There were moments when memories of Emily crept back into my mind: the careless way she had spent the money I had worked so hard to save, the dismissal of my sacrifices, the broken trust. At first, I felt an involuntary pang of anxiety, a fear that I might somehow repeat the same mistakes in my new relationship. But then I reminded myself of all I had learned, that love is not just about emotion, but about respect, trust, and reciprocity. I took deliberate steps to ensure that my past did not intrude on my present. I communicated openly with my new partner about my experiences, about the heartbreak and betrayal I had endured, and about the importance of mutual respect. She listened without judgment, offering empathy and understanding, and together we built a foundation of trust that felt both comforting and empowering. And like my previous relationship, there was no hidden tension, no unspoken resentments, only honesty and care. Work also became a source of renewed purpose. I had taken a step back after the breakup, allowing myself to recover emotionally, but I began to push myself professionally once again. I volunteered for challenging projects, mentored younger colleagues, and invested in building skills I had previously neglected. Each accomplishment, each recognition, reinforced my confidence and reminded me that my value was not contingent on a romantic relationship. It was intrinsic, built over years of effort and perseverance. One evening, while reflecting on the past, I realized how much I had grown emotionally. I no longer felt the same panic or despair at the thought of heartbreak. Instead, I felt empowered. I had learned to assert my boundaries, to value my own efforts, and to recognize the signs of a healthy partnership. I understood that heartbreak was not a failure, it was a teacher, guiding me toward deeper awareness and self-respect. Then came a moment that surprised me. Emily reached out, years after the incident, with a message that was equal parts apology and explanation. She admitted that she had acted selfishly, that she had failed to understand the significance of my efforts, and that she regretted the way she had treated me. Reading her words stirred memories I had worked hard to process, but instead of anger, I felt a calm sense of closure. I replied briefly, acknowledging her message but also affirming that I had moved on. I no longer needed her validation to feel whole. Life continued to unfold in ways that I had never anticipated. My relationship flourished, grounded in mutual respect and shared goals. We traveled together, explored new hobbies, and celebrated milestones with joy and appreciation. I watched myself grow. Not just as a partner, but as a person who had endured hardship and emerged stronger, wiser, and more emotionally resilient. I also began mentoring others who were navigating difficult relationships. I shared my experiences, the lessons I had learned about trust, self-worth, and the importance of discernment. I encouraged them to prioritize integrity and mutual respect in their partnerships and to recognize that heartbreak, while painful, could serve as a catalyst for growth. Guiding others in this way brought a sense of fulfillment I hadn't anticipated. It was as if the pain I had endured was being transformed into something meaningful for others. Years later, as I prepared to propose to my new partner formally, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. I thought about the months I had saved for Emily, the heartbreak, the anger, the lessons, and the growth. I realized that every challenge, every disappointment, every moment of struggle had shaped me into someone capable of building a truly healthy, loving relationship. The day I knelt down and asked her to marry me, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not for the engagement ring itself, but for the journey that had led me to this moment, a journey filled with heartbreak, self-discovery, resilience, and ultimately, love that was grounded in respect and reciprocity. Looking back, I understand now that life rarely unfolds according to plan. The moments that seem most devastating can, in hindsight, become the most transformative. Losing that engagement ring, while painful, taught me lessons that no happiness or success could have imparted. It showed me my own strength, my capacity for love, and the importance of building a life with someone who truly honors and respects the effort, care, and sacrifice we invest in relationships. And in that understanding, I found peace. Not the fleeting, fragile peace that comes from avoiding conflict or suppressing emotion, but the deep, enduring peace that comes from knowing I had acted with integrity, honored my values, and ultimately found a love that reflected the person I had become. The heartbreak that once seemed unbearable had in the end led me to a life richer, more meaningful, and more deeply fulfilling than I could have imagined when I first lost that engagement ring.